Good morning. Wow. We were thinking that we would just maybe get a couple of you guys showing up after the big party, but thank you so much for coming out to our session today. My name is Patrick Chang. I'm Senior Product Manager at VMware, responsible for hybrid cloud solutions.
Yeah, my name is Massimo Referet, and I'm a vCloud architect working in the Center of Excellence, and I usually work in the field with customers and service providers.
So today we'll go through two fairly interesting topics. First one, we'll go through some of the interesting hybrid cloud use cases that we've seen in the field. Many of you are probably thinking about hybrid cloud as well. And then Maximo will take you through that. And then towards the back end, I'll take you through some of the new solutions that we actually just announced on Monday. And we'll take you through some screenshots and show you how easy it is for you to realize hybrid cloud. So without further ado, Maximo.
Okay. Thank you very much. So as you have guessed, I mean, the most interesting part is Patrick's part. So I will try to get out of the way pretty quickly here. But we really need to set the stage about what we are doing from a technology perspective. So we will spend about 10, 15 minutes reading the disclaimer. No, I'm joking. So this standard disclaimer, we will be talking about, what we are doing now and maybe give you a few hints about what we're going to do in the future. Takeaway from this session is primarily you can really implement hybrid cloud provided that you plan it accordingly and you use the right tools. Obviously, this makes obviously sense. And then Patrick is going to touch on two key technologies / services that are vcloud.vmware.com, which is a web service that Patrick is going to show you live, I believe, also. If the internet connectivity works. And that is what I define the go-to for all vCloud type of stuff. And then Patrick is also going to touch on vCloud Connector, which is one of those tools that we are implementing to deliver on this vision of the hybrid cloud. Okay. So the agenda is, as Patrick was hinting before, we will primarily go through some, introduction slides and use cases that we have seen in the field in terms of, how to use and how to consume this hybrid cloud. And then Patrick will get into more details about the technologies that he's bringing into the market. He gave me the tough one, which is the journey slide. So the way I see this slide, and I try to explain this slide, is that it's a multidimensional thing. So don't look at this as the usual, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. We are here to talk primarily about infrastructure as a service today, and specifically in this session here. But there are different ways to provide these services to the end users, depending on who the end users is. So we are kind of introducing, and you will see more of this terminology going forward from us, these low governance and high governance type of cloud, which basically means, if you take the example of the column on the very left, this is the typical VCD type of scenario where you are basically presenting raw infrastructure capacity in the forms of, CPU, memory, and in a way, in a virtual data center, right? If you look on the other side, the more business-focused IT as a service, that means that you kind of expose the same infrastructure resources, but in a more sophisticated way, right? With a more high-level portal that you can implement with, for example, VMware Service Manager or Cisco NewScale or whatever you can think of. And basically, this is the difference between this low governance and high governance cloud. And you will see more of this terminology going forward from us in the future. So what is hybrid cloud? And the way I usually pitch hybrid cloud and what we are doing here is basically this. If you think about what you have been doing, you being, an IT organization, in the last, 7 to 8 years, you have probably been doing something like this, right? So we have introduced technologies, namely, virtual infrastructure, vSphere, now vSphere 5, that would allow you to, take a number of hardware vendors, put them together, and create this abstraction layer that allows you to do certain things across these hardware vendors, right? So this doesn't mean that we want to commoditize those hardware vendors, because each of those hardware vendors have uniqueness, and UCS, Cisco, EMC, NetApp comes to mind, and all of our hardware partners that could expose their uniquenesses to you as a vSphere user. But fundamentally, we wanted to create this homogeneous vision of the data center that would allow you to mix and match all of these hardware vendors. Hybrid cloud, and what we want to do as a next step, is to introduce an additional layer of abstraction that would allow you in the long run to do seamlessly what I'm showing in this picture. So this picture is not a product picture, is where we want ideally to move IT into the next phase. So as you can see, the idea is pretty much the same. The difference here is that we're not just talking about on-premises infrastructure or private cloud infrastructure. We want also to talk about public cloud infrastructure, right? And we want to create this layer of tools and technologies that will allow you to treat this mixed infrastructure, private and public, as if it was a single entity, right? And what Patrick is going to show you is basically, or the first steps into this journey of this tooling here. When we present, and when I present this vision to customers, specifically to customers and end users, they say, you know what, this is a great vision, I like it, but we are a vSphere shop. How do we move from where we are today to the thing that you are, talking about right now, right? Because we have a business that we're running, and we can't just, erase everything and start from scratch from that interesting thing that we were discussing here. So this is where the vCloud connector and vcloud.vmware.com comes in, basically. So this is what we have discussed before, right? So we want to create this vision where you have a private cloud, public cloud, this abstraction layer that you would ideally access through APIs, UI, or third-party tools that are built out of those APIs. But as a vSphere shop, how do you get into that world? And this is where, as I said, Patrick's technologies are coming into place. Specifically, vCloud Connector, that is basically a plugin that plugs into the vSphere client that allows you to see both on-premises resources as well as off-premises resources. And Patrick will go through more details about this later on. Okay? So this is another view of what we have been talking about, right? So again, there is this difference between the on-premises resources and off-premises resources, where you have, or you could have on-site vSphere deployments as well as vCloud or private cloud deployment. And then on the other side, you have service providers that are giving you the ability to connect to their public cloud based obviously on our technology. And this could be, spread across the world, EMEA, Asia Pacific, North America, whatever, okay? So let's go through some of the use cases that we have been discussing with customers, specifically where they find this thing interesting. And the first one is very simple, right? So vSphere customers that has, for example, production and test environment, and they would like to take advantage of the transition of the test environment, where maybe, for example, I've been working with a bank that had, a huge on-site capacity for their test environment because it was different from obviously different production environment, and they were using that enormous capacity just, a fraction of the time, right? Maybe like, 1-2 weeks per quarter or things like that at peak. So they may find a good trade-off in trying to move those environment, those test and development environment into a public cloud, maybe in a pay-as-you-go type of model, so they don't have to pay, even if they don't use those resources. And this is one of the examples that most customers are very interested in. And obviously the challenge here is, how do I manage, which goes back to the slide that I was presenting, how do I manage this environment in a seamless manner, or as seamless as possible, okay? The other use case that we found very interesting with customers, specifically customers that have huge distributed test and development and QA organizations is how do I keep, for example, different test and development environment up to date, right? So I want these to be spread across the world, leveraging service providers that are spread across the world, because my engineers are spread across the world. I don't want to put on-premise capacity in all those locations. So the challenge in this case is how do I keep synchronized all of these templates that these developers across the world are using, okay? Another interesting use case here. Another one that is kind of, goes back to the very first example, which is not just test and development. There are customers that are thinking about, I want to keep mission critical application in-house, for example. I don't want to put the SAP application into a private cloud, at least not today. I just want to start with something that is more, or I would say less critical for me as a business. So I would like to move out to the cloud and maybe to different service providers, tier 3, tier 2 type of applications, okay? And the challenge here is obviously how can I make sure that they are running as well as they were running inside the data center here, okay? That's another interesting one, which is, for example, how do I stretch my application to keep, for example, let's say in the previous example, we were talking about, monolithic application, and I either want to keep them in-house or I can move them entirely into the cloud. There are other use cases where this application may be stretching across this environment, right? So I just want, for example, to have a database and the application server in-house, and I want to have the web server outside, maybe for scalability reasons, for example, right? So I can instantiate new workloads in the cloud where I have peak or things like that, okay? And obviously here the challenges are networking between the clouds, and here technologies like VXLAN that we have announced a couple of days ago at the keynote may help, of course, achieving this transition to this mixed type of environment, okay? The other one is more, if you will, futuristic type of thinking, like, cloud busting type of scenario where you have in-house type of application and you want to, for example, cloud bust out into the cloud. And there are other challenges obviously associated to this, depending also on how fast you want to react to event and all this kind of stuff. But these are things that we are starting to discuss with customers to fundamentally leverage the flexibility that the service provider could give you in providing you raw capacity fundamentally on the fly, right? So, and obviously there are challenges associated to this environment, which is, how do I, deploy this workload? How do I keep, again, the templates consistent? How do I route traffic between my on-site premises and my service providers that I subscribe to, okay? So this is just to give you a few, ideas of scenarios where we found customers very interested in, okay? And of course, there are other challenges. We are not going through, each of them here, but this slide is primarily here to show you that we realize very well, and we know that our job is not just to encapsulate, a piece of software into a VMDK that we can move back and forth, okay? There are a number of other challenges associated to the use cases that we have just been talking about in the previous slides, and we are well aware of those challenges, and you can read some of those over here, such as the incompatibilities between various clouds and user identity management. Patrick, in the next few slides, is going to touch on how we can solve today some of these challenges. Of course, there is work going on in parallel to Patrick's set of technology that are going to address other issues like, for example, the monitoring of the availability and performance of the workloads in the cloud. There are some interesting thoughts about how to leverage vCenter operation to do these, mesh view of local and remote resources here. But we know that there are lots of challenges, right? And we don't necessarily have an answer today for all of them. And that's why I said that, we don't ask customers to take their SAP environment and put it into the cloud the very first day. What I usually say is that I see a very common pattern that I have seen in the last 10 years with virtualization adoption, right? So we started with test and development, we moved into tier 3, tier 2, and now we are talking about, and lots of customers are virtualizing SAP on Vsphere, right? And with this new model that I have introduced here, I see lots of commonalities in this pattern of the adoption of these new technologies and these new deployment models here. So with this being said, I hope it was good enough to give you a rough introduction to what Patrick is going to talk to you about.
Thanks, Maximo. So on Monday morning, we launched a fairly important initiative for both customers and service providers called vcloud.vmware.com. These are the three main things that customers can do. First of all, you can find a list of vCloud service providers across the world. Why is that important? I was at the booth, and we have a lot of customers come over and go, hey, I'm doing private cloud. And I go, are you doing public? They go, it sounds a little too difficult. I don't know who to talk to. Well, guess what? You can now come to vcloud.vmware.com. You can quickly see, for example, if you click on North America, you can see a list of the service providers that serve the North American market. You click on any one of them, you can learn more about what they offer. And for those of you who have concerns about security, many of our cloud service providers actually have achieved certification that will ease your concerns. And you can find that here in the Details tab. But perhaps the most important thing is the ability to connect between you and the service provider. Many people go, things just sound so hard. I have limited time. How can I get started very quickly? My boss is telling me you got to do hybrid cloud. Everybody's doing it. How can you show value to your boss very quickly? You can apply for a public cloud account. A service provider will pick up the phone, call you, understand your use case, and set you up a public cloud account. Then what? Now I get a public cloud account. How do I still show I can do hybrid cloud? Then you use the vCloud connector. Most of you here, in fact, I will say every one of you are probably a Vsphere customer. Every one of you have a lot of VMs and templates on those environments, and we thank you for standardizing your virtualization environment on VMware. Your developers are the ones who always come and go, hey, can I get more VMs? Private cloud is a fantastic solution to help address the issues like self-service. How can I get developers and those guys go to a portal, request for resources? That's fantastic. But one thing that customers still say is, well, what if I don't have the capacity? Classic case, I talk to customers, they go, I have 1,000 VMs. But a developer might come and go, I want to do some simulation testing. I need 200 VMs tomorrow. What are you going to do? How do you meet your customer demand and show your management team that we have a solution for our developers, our internal users, so they don't have to go to some other commodity cloud, which may go up and down depending on what happens, with lightning and thunderstorm. So after you connect with a vCloud service provider and get a public cloud account, now you can use vCloud connector to move some of the development templates that you have tested and validated over and over again. You don't want your developer to go and use some public cloud, do things on their own, and then come back to you and go, hey, I built this application in the cloud. I need to deploy in production. Can you help me? This is something that happens quite often these days. And with vCloud connector, you can now move some of those templates to the cloud, spin up VMs, and get your developers and QA folks to start using the cloud, using the same environment that you have tested internally. Voila, you now have a hybrid cloud solution. vCloud Connector allows you to, within the vSphere client interface that you use day in, day out, see the list of resources across multiple clouds, whether it is vSphere, private, or public cloud. And you can do multiple of them. And you can then pick resources and move them back and forth between clouds. So with vcloud.vmware.com, you find service providers that you want to work with. You can apply for a trial account. And once you get one thing set up, you can then move resources over there and get started. And when your boss comes around and go, hey, how's that hybrid cloud initiative going on? Show them the vSphere client interface that he hopefully has seen before. And go, here's my hybrid cloud. Every customer that came to my booth at VMworld, the moment I said this, they go, I get it. Hybrid cloud is not hard. Hybrid cloud can be made easy. So we believe that these two products and services are your gateway to enterprise hybrid cloud. Over the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you a little bit more screenshots to show you what it actually looks like in real life. The product actually has shipped. vCloud Connector shipped in February 2011, and many of you probably are using it today with over 1,500 customer downloads. Many of them are using it to move stuff between vSphere and vSphere, vSphere to private cloud, as well as vSphere to public cloud. vCloud.vmware.com is something that we launched brand new on Monday. So these two products will continue to help you to realize the hybrid cloud vision. vCloud Connector 1.5, which is the next version, is now in beta. Towards the end of the deck, I'll show you how to actually get started with the beta. So in a nutshell, these are the features of vCloud Connector. Let me walk through each one of them. vCloud Connector allows you to view, operate, and copy resources across hybrid clouds. Within a single interface, whether it's vSphere client or the browser, you can see resources across multiple clouds. You can perform basic operations, such as power on, off. You can access the console of a VM or vApp, regardless of where it runs, private, public, anywhere. You can deploy vApp templates on vCloud directly inside the vSphere client using fence mode network configuration. But perhaps the most important feature is the ability to copy workloads back and forth between these clouds, VMs, vApps, and templates. We have a much more efficient and reliable transfer mechanism in this release. I'll go through the architecture with you later on. You can also do control sharing. What that means is today with vCloud Connector, when you go to vSphere client, you might have multiple users accessing the vSphere client interface, and all of them will see vCloud Connector. However, you do not want everybody to share the same account to access different clouds. So let's say John here added his credential to go to his private vSphere and a public cloud account, let's say BlueLock. Dave here comes in, see vCloud Connector and go, I want to move stuff around. But he needs to add his own credentials to private vSphere or maybe a different public cloud account, let's say Code in the UK. So this is how we make sure that people don't accidentally do things to some other accounts that they're not supposed to. And with the introduction of the browser interface for vCloud Connector, customers can also share even at the browser level. We already talked about multiple interfaces. And as any product you can imagine, we first start with, hey, let's just get the product out, make sure it works, and then let's do some polish afterwards. So one of the polished features that we've added is the management interface to help customers actually manage the vCloud Connector environment. So conceptually, many of you may have seen this already. On the left-hand side, we have a vSphere environment that is not managed by vCloud Director, standalone, which many of you have. On the right-hand side, you have vCloud Director, whether it's private or public. Today, with vSphere Client, you can only see what's running inside your vSphere environment. Once you add vCloud Connector, you can see what's running in the public, private vCloud or other vSphere instances, all within the same interface. You can copy vApps, templates from vSphere to vCloud back and forth. And of course, once you move them over, They now show up in the context of vCloud in the vSphere client. And you can do operations such as power on, off, or access the console of a VM. I'll show you what the product looks like in real life. You're very familiar with vSphere client interface. And right now, what I'm going to show you is the 1.5 vCloud connector product that is in beta right now. It's a free public beta, which all of you can go and access. Okay? So I really encourage you to go and give it a shot and help your organization realize hybrid cloud very quickly. When you click on that, still within the vSphere client interface, you see the vSphere environment that you're connecting to. The interface looks probably very much like the next generation client that you might have already seen in one of the breakout sessions, because we do intend to have much closer integration with our next generation client. So you just, at this point, you see a list of workloads or VMs or VApps running in the vSphere environment. Here's the important thing. You can now add multiple clouds, whether it is another instance of vSphere, so you can actually see multiple vSphere instances, private or public cloud, by providing the URL, or in the vCenter case, the IP address of those clouds. Provide your own username and credentials, okay? So we're not doing account provisioning. You need to have an account in those clouds before you come here. Once you do that, on the left-hand side, this is how you have a hybrid cloud view. You can see what's running in vSphere, as well as in this case, what's running in the public cloud. And here's a list of the vApps that are running in the public cloud. You can click on the thumbnail and actually access the console of that vApp that's running in the public vCloud directly inside your vSphere client interface. So you can do things like setting up images, powering on VM and vApp. We also have a search function that allows you to search for VMs and vApps or templates by name. This is actually a very important feature, because unlike vSphere client, which you go and do a lot of administration, over here your actions are much more targeted. Classical case would be, I've identified some workloads I want to move to the cloud. I have thousands of them in vSphere. I want to come in, search for those specific VMs and vApps, and move them over. So that's why the search function is actually a very critical feature we added in this release. We also show the list of templates that are running in vSphere as well as vCloud. And here's the important feature that everybody talks about, the ability to pick on a template and say, I want to copy it to the public cloud, specify, in this case, the org VDC and the catalog in the public cloud where you want it to reside. We show the progress of the copy operation. Once it's done, voila. In the public cloud, now you have a template that you have personally tested, your developers have personally used, and your QA guys have tested as well, all internally. Now the template is sitting out in the public cloud. So there's no concern about what are people going to do in the public cloud, because you are actually specifying what gets done in the public cloud by moving these templates over. Likewise, you can also copy VMs and vApps as well. Perhaps the most common question I get is, oh, this is great, vMotion over WAN. Not quite, not yet. We're working on that technology, but this is not vMotion. So you do have to power off the VM and the vApp before you copy it back and forth between clouds. So you go through exactly the same process. You specify where you want to move the VM. Because we're moving the VM to a vCloud, vCloud expects everything to first get stored in a template. So it first gets stored in a template inside the vCloud environment, and then we allow you to then go and deploy the vApp template as a vApp inside vCloud. It's important to emphasize that you can deploy using fence mode network configuration. And then once you do that, voila, the vApp has been deployed in the vCloud. And let me pause for a second and emphasize something very critical here. vCloud Connector is meant to be a hybrid cloud solution that allows you to visualize, operate, and copy. However, it is not a full-blown configuration solution for your vCloud and your vSphere. The following analogy seems to strike a chord with people, so I'll try to do that one more time. Think of us as a very reliable and efficient U-Haul. You have a home here. You just got a new home. Private, public cloud. You want to move stuff back and forth. Absolutely. You call U-Haul, and you bring your stuff over. Once we bring your stuff over, we will place your furniture maybe in the front yard. Maybe we'll put it inside your house. But if you want to do things like, hey, I want to move the sofa here so I can face the TV here. I want to move the chair over here. We don't do any of that. You got to go inside your new house to do that. So the analogy is vCloud Connector allows you to visualize, see what's running in both of your new homes or your clouds, operate on them, perform some basic operations, and copy them back and forth. But if you want to do more detailed configuration, you got to go inside the cloud. And to do that, you can actually launch the vCloud Director UI directly from within the vCloud Connector. So once you move the stuff over, then you use the vCloud Director UI to go and do the network configuration. So don't mistake vCloud Connector as, oh, I can just do everything that I can do in vCloud UI directly inside vCloud Connector. Likewise, we will also not replicate all the Vsphere client features because that's not what this product is for. With vCloud.vmware.com, which we launched earlier this week, you can now access the vCloud Connector UI directly inside a browser. Why do we do that? Today, many of our customers say, hey, I'm going to the public cloud. I'm starting from the Vsphere client. Why? Because that's where I spend all my time in. I want to move stuff from Vsphere to the private cloud or the public cloud. But we're also starting to hear customers go, hey, I have a lot of developers that are now using multiple public cloud or want to use multiple public cloud. I've never given these guys access to my vSphere client, and I'm not about to change now. So the ability to move stuff back and forth is only accessible in vSphere client. It's not going to work for me. So that's why we built vCloud.vmware.com first as a way for you to find the vCloud service provider that you want to work with, and secondly, to start delivering hybrid cloud solutions like vCloud Connector directly in the browser environment. So we are seeing the trend. We are doing things to help you move with the trend and set you up for success for hybrid cloud. So here's the architecture. At the bottom, we have the data plane where we have the different clouds you can connect to. In the v1.5 product, we now have a new architecture where you need to put a node. It's a virtual appliance that you run in each of the cloud, whether it's private or public, for coordinated transfer between clouds. You install the vCloud Connector server on-prem in vSphere, and in the near future, vCloud Director as well. The UI is accessible by the vSphere client, as you have seen, as well as through the browser via vCloud.vmware.com. Let me explain the significance of this new feature of nodes. With 1.0, for those of you who have used the product, heard about it, wonderful product to realize the hybrid cloud vision, but there's some flaws, one of which is the ability to move stuff reliably over clouds. I'll be the first one to admit that classic 1.0 product, get it out there, get customer feedback, and improve on it. Every customer said, I'm using it, but you got to improve on the reliability of the transfer. That's why we have no architecture. What we do today now is, let's say you're moving a VM. We break up that VM into, let's say, 5 parts, and then we move them over. Let's say part 1, part 2, part 3 get moved over successfully. Part 4 was interrupted due to some network glitch. In v1.0, we just go, sorry, we failed. So come back, you see it, and go, geez, I got to start over again. With this release, the 2 nodes are smart enough to realize 3 parts were successfully copied over. The 4th one got interrupted due to network glitch. Now I would actually pick up from the 4th and resume. So you will save a lot of time over 1.0 when you have to say, geez, it failed. Let me try it again. Oh, it failed again. Let me try it again. In this release, it will be done automatically for you. You can also do simultaneous transfers. So you can say, I want to copy 10 VMs or 10 templates over to the public or private cloud, and each one of them will be moved in parallel. So we believe this release has significantly improved on the reliability front to make it even easier for you to realize the hybrid cloud vision. Let's talk about the significance of the server in the data center. We debated back and forth actually with Maximo and our field. Should we put the server as a SaaS service? Because now that we got vcloud.vmware.com, why don't we just put it over there? We talked to customers, and they said, no, guys, that's interesting, but think about what you guys are trying to do. I'm moving stuff from private vSphere to public. I don't want an external SaaS service poke through my firewall, look at what's running in my vSphere, and pull the data out. Good vision, yep, we get it, but not now. So that's why we continue to keep the vCloud connector server as an on-prem installation. Then you see, well, what's that external browser thing, and how come the vCloud connector UI is not shown there? This is, again, to address that concern. If you're behind the firewall, whether you're going through vSphere client or the vcloud.vmware.com, we believe that you will feel comfortable with the vSphere data being shown in those contexts. But what if you're actually at home, logging in outside of the firewall? You probably won't feel very comfortable with data being pulled out and shown in that environment. So we're taking painstaking effort to make sure that cloud doesn't mean insecurity. Cloud can be very secure. Hybrid cloud can be real if you know what you're going to do. And like Maximo said, we know that this is a start. This is by no means the end. We're at, depending on your sports analogy, first inning in a baseball game, first minute in a hockey game. We have a long way to go, but we believe with these solutions, vcloud.vmware.com and vCloud Connector, that we are starting to help you and your organization realize the hybrid cloud vision. It's a journey. We need you to work with us to give us feedback. Without your feedback, we wouldn't have realized what we need to do to improve on the reliability transfer. I want to really draw your attention to the beta community. It's vmware.com/go/VCC1.5 beta. It's free for any one of you with VMware.com store ID and password. Please come to this community now. It'll be open for the next 4 to 5 weeks. This is the beta period. We'd love to have you try out the product. And in fact, I'm going to show you what the beta community looks like. So here's the beta community. Log in with your username and password. Here's the beta community. You can come in, you can download the product, you can try out a beta version of vcloud.vmware.com where you can do the mashup between vCloud Connector and the beta. We also have assignments for you to try an actual online survey. This is how you can help us develop a better product to help you realize the hybrid cloud vision. And just quickly showing you, here's the vcloud.vmware.com service that's live today. You can click on North America, take a look at the list of service providers that we have. Click on any one of them, see the certifications they have, so they meet your enterprise security needs, and you can apply for a trial account. So with that, what we started off with, these are 3 takeaways that we hope you will have by the end of the session. And here are 3 of them. You can realize the benefits of hybrid cloud with planning and the right tools. vCloud.vmware.com can help you find those service providers, and vCloud Connector can help you realize a hybrid cloud vision by moving stuff back and forth between your clouds. And again, I want to emphasize, you can do it between vSphere and vSphere and vCloud, private or public, and you can even do it between public clouds as well. So we have about 10, 15 minutes left. Let's open up the floor for questions. And by the way, for those of you who are on your way out, don't forget to pick up a T-shirt to thank you for coming to our session this morning and for coming to VMworld as well. So, question.
Yeah, just a clarification question. Is vCloud Connector a browser plugin, and then vCloud Connector server is the one that sits on the corporate firewall? Seems like you are talking vCloud Connector to address both.
So vCloud Connector server is a virtual appliance that you deploy in a vSphere or vCloud environment,
okay.
And then the UI gets shown inside the vCloud, inside the vSphere client. So that's where the vSphere client plugin comes in.
vSphere client plugin.
Right.
Okay,
so think of the server as a web server, and it serves up these pages to the vSphere client. So that's how it works.
The connector is actually a plugin inside the vSphere client.
Yes.
It's not a browser plugin. It's just inside the vSphere client.
It is a browser plugin inside the vSphere client.
It's a browser plugin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question.
Excuse me, I have a question. So when you move a VM from your private cloud to a public cloud, so you also move all the storage from like for example, your VM have a 20 gigabytes. When you build the VM, right, have a 20 gigabytes of the storage. You also move that storage into the public cloud.
Right. So think of it this way: when we move some stuff, when we move a VM, let's say 20 gig VM from private vSphere to the public cloud,
right.
We export that VM as an OVF. And then we copy the OVF into the public cloud environment,
right.
And then we import it. So doing the importing, vCloud Director will allocate storage for that OVF. So we are not necessarily moving the storage per se. We're exporting an OVF with a specified storage requirement, and once it gets into the public cloud, we will allocate storage on the other end because we're essentially just using the vCloud API to import and export the OVFs.
So what do you mean is the storage is not moved to the public cloud? You only move the
think of it as the following.
Memory into the public
So
cloud,
when we say
right?
move, you have a VM in vSphere. You export that VM as an OVF. It is it's a file that specifies here's how much storage I need, here's the data I need. It's almost like a zip file, if you will. We copy the OVF into the public cloud, and then once it's in the public cloud, we import it. When we import it, then vCloud Director will now say, okay, here's a template or here's a VM. I need to allocate 20 gig of storage for it. Okay, so that's how it actually specifies the storage. So in a way, yes, you are getting storage in the new public cloud environment. Now you can then go back to your old private vSphere environment. You can delete, so you're no longer using storage. So does that make sense?
Yeah, my question actually is you move the content from memory to the public cloud, or you move the whole storage from the hard drive to the public cloud?
We move the whole thing. Whether they have memory, hard drive, it's basically the whole VM the whole VM is encapsulated in an OVF. That's both memory, hard disk, storage requirements, data, everything. And then we copy over to the new environment.
Copy over, okay.
Exactly.
And then you have to pay for all the storage, pay all the machine time.
In the new public cloud environment, yes.
Do you need a license or the license agreement? Everything is already done, or have
So we
as a user?
We don't actually address the licensing issue. So if you say, for example, I have a Microsoft VM, right, and I have a SQL server. When I copy over to the cloud, does my licensing transfer over to the public cloud? That's not something that our product solves. That's something that you have to deal with Microsoft or your license ISV. We don't deal with the licensing issue.
Yeah, another question actually is some VM, when they optimize for some specific processor, right?
Right.
But the public cloud maybe doesn't have this feature, the processor. How you handle that part?
Well, so in a way, if you think about virtualization, right, we kind of abstracted those things already. But you're right that if your application was built specifically to take advantage of certain hardware that you have internally, and that hardware is actually exposed by the hypervisor, some of that capability may not be fully realized depending on what hardware they have on the public side. Right. But virtualization is to abstract a lot of that thing away because That's what the hypervisor is for.
That means you cannot guarantee the performance, right? Because originally they have optimized for some specific processor feature. But when you move from private cloud to the public cloud processor doesn't have this feature. That means the performance will be downgraded, right? Something
Right,
like that.
and that's why Maximo and I talked about checking, making sure that your application will continue to perform in a public cloud environment is one of the challenges that we have to overcome. So you're absolutely spot on that there might be cases where an application performs better in private versus public. But likewise, we've also seen cases where an application performs better in a public than a private environment because, believe it or not, some of our service providers actually have better hardware than what you might have internally, faster bandwidth. So I think ultimately, nobody can promise, but you have to look and check and monitor the application performance on both ends to see.
Yeah, last question. So when you move your VM from private cloud to the public cloud, what is the cost you predict? Will it be increase or will it be down, decrease?
That's a really tough one. So obviously with public cloud, you're not paying for the CapEx, right? You're paying only for pay-as-you-go or pay for the storage, whatever that you use. At least you don't have to pay to set up the environment. Mm-hmm. So I cannot tell you where moving a VM running in private is definitely cheaper than running in public. That's really hard to say. The way to think about it is, in many cases, moving to public is for cost. But we've seen, for example, earlier this week, I was in a session with a lot of many of our very elite customers who give us feedback over the years, and I asked them, what is the reason for going to public cloud? Cost is actually not number one. It's actually agility, the ability to address my spiky needs, as opposed to, well, I don't have the capacity, I'm sorry, I can't give you the benefit. So don't always associate cost as the number one benefit. Agility is actually the one that people really care about. And in some cases, it may be cheaper to run in the public cloud. In some cases, it may be cheaper to run in the private cloud. You really have to look at the use case and your organizational needs.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. 2 questions. Is there plans to optimize how you migrate to the public cloud by utilizing snapshots? Because right now, from what I understand, it's an offline migration. You have to shut down the VM and then move it across.
So that's a good question. The question is, are we going to do some optimization to make it faster to move stuff back and forth, taking snapshots or maybe just moving delta bits? Those are the things we're looking at, including perhaps integration with WAN acceleration tools out there. So yeah, that's something that we're looking at in the future.
And the second one is there any implications if you're running different versions of VMware? Does it have to be 5.x to move back and forth to the cloud?
That's an excellent question. I wish I covered that earlier. We support Vsphere 5, 4.1, 4.0, vCloud Director 1.0, 1.0.1, and 1.5. So we're very wide coverage already. And we do take care of the intra-version or inter-version compatibility issues. If this is something that Vsphere and vCloud support, vCloud Director can allow you to do that. Great question.
You mentioned that you could connect multiple vSphere clients, even private ones with vConnector.
Multiple vSphere environment.
Okay, vSphere environments. What's the scale on that? What's the limit? How many vSphere environments can I connect to one vCloud connector?
10.
10?
Yeah.
And how many VMs have you tested it to? Like, if I have multiple data centers across the United States, they're all private, and each of them have several thousand VMs, I mean, what's your upper limit?
That's something that we actually looking to explore with our beta product. We have been testing with some fairly large environments in-house, and that's frankly we haven't done all the performance and scalability testing yet, but and that's something that we'll continue to work on. Even if that's really my best answer at this point. We can support up to 10 clouds, whether it's vSphere, private or public, and we can look at all the VMs and the VApps. If I really encourage you to participate in our beta and actually give us feedback.
Okay. One more question real quick, just to clarify an earlier question. So if I have a virtual machine in my private vSphere environment, and it has 20 gigs of a hard drive space, and I install a homegrown map on that, and I copy it to the public, is my homegrown map going to be there? In other words, are you copying bit for bit the hard drive, the VMDK file, over into the cloud? Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Question?
For the vcloud.vmware.com site, when you want to test drive a cloud, is it talking to the vCloud APIs in the back end to start creating VDCs and networking pools, or is it just basically sending an email to BlueLock and saying, hey, can you set me up?
It's the latter. It's basically saying, hey, I'm customer X, I want to get a public cloud account. They will actually pick up the phone and go, hey, what is your use case? Let's talk through it, and then I'll set you up something. It's not automatic provisioning of an account yet. Question?
Along the same lines then, within vCloud Director, I mean, if they're moving stuff up there and you notice that, I mean, you could launch vCloud Director interface and be able to then start managing it, you would want it already in a virtual data center. So that would be provisioned with the account?
So vCloud Connector never does any provisioning, okay?
Right. No, but when you ask to get the account before you can even move it, you would want a virtual data center and storage allocated and
that's right.
So forth. Okay. Second one was when you're in your normal, I saw in the plugin you can see your local vCenter infrastructure and you can see your cloud.
Yep.
In your normal vCenter view, can you see the cloud then, or do you just have to be in the plugin?
Yeah, you really have to come into the vCloud Connector interface for it.
Okay.
Longer term, we want to have a much tighter integration with the Vsphere client, so you don't have to go through
just different icons, you know.
Yeah. So absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
Question?
Hey, Patrick, so you showed in one of your diagrams the vcloud.vmware.com sitting on-premise, and if you were to operate from it from an external browser, it wouldn't work. But it doesn't look like vcloud.vmware.com portal is really managing your cloud, right? It's more of searching for service providers and...
okay. So perhaps I went through that a little bit too quickly, but
yeah, no,
look
the
at
one
that.
after
This is actually vcloud.vmware.com.
Okay.
But the vCloud Connector UI actually is shown inside vcloud.vmware.com. So that's the point I tried to emphasize early on, which is vcloud.vmware.com allows you to find service provider. That's one goal. The other goal is to deliver services such as vCloud Connector directly inside the browser. So look at this. I know it looks like the exact same interface, but if you look at the left-hand side, you see how you have the vCloud ecosystem and the community and the support. Those things only appear in the vcloud.vmware.com. So I know it takes a little bit of time to understand what this is, but this is really a browser. This is a web page. This is the web page for vcloud.vmware.com. It's just that the vCloud Connector UI can be displayed inside the browser. So this is how you can also use vcloud.vmware.com and the VCC UI inside it to move stuff back and forth between clouds.
So if I weren't using vcloud.vmware.com, the only feature I wouldn't have is be able to search.
That is correct. If you just have vcloud.vmware.com, you'll just be able to see the vCloud service providers. Until you also download and install vCloud Connector, then you can say, hey, I want to use the UI inside vcloud.vm.com. You're absolutely correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I may have missed this earlier. Did you say you can copy VMs back from the cloud as well?
Absolutely.
From the public cloud? Sorry.
Absolutely. Back and forth between public, private, anywhere you go.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Looks like we might have one last question.
Does vCloud Connector has capabilities to manage workloads in some of the clouds which are not authorized or not service providers to VMware, like EC2?
The question is, can vCloud Connector move workload to non-VMware-based cloud? Not today.
Not today. So is that something in the pipeline, or you guys expect?
Possibly. Can comment on future product, but it may or may not happen.
All right. Thanks.
But today, it only supports VMware-based clouds. Okay, I guess this is it. Thank you so much for sticking around, and have a good rest of Thursday. And thank you so much for coming to our session in VMworld. Bye-bye.